We're at a crucial point in the suppression of COVID-19 and the vaccine rollout. However, the government are dropping the ball on both fronts and are letting people down. Figures released yesterday from the Department of Justice show that international travel is on the rise. And that's because currently there is no serious deterrent to travel in place and little or no follow-up. And that's putting all of us at risk, regardless of how hard people are trying to adhere to the public health advice. It's also increasingly clear that problems relating to the vaccine rollout go well beyond the issue of slow supply. Last week, the Minister for Health wrote to all TDs in this House to say that the HSE had confirmed to him that they were on target to administer a dose to all of those aged over 85 by the end of the week. He has since rolled back on that position, and the government is now set to miss that target. GPs have contacted us to express their serious concerns about the buddy system. They're telling us that they have not been provided with a single point of contact in relation to coordinate the rollout. They're telling us that the communication is shambolic, with little notice given as to when the vaccine will be made available to their practices and their patients. And then other practices have been telling us that while they have been promised vaccines on certain dates, they didn't arrive. That leaves GPs with making hundreds of phone calls, cancelling vaccination appointments for those vulnerable elderly patients. And Taoiseach, this is simply not acceptable, and it needs to be sorted, and it needs to be sorted fast. The HSE needs to look at this urgency. They need to reassure the public who want to see their loved ones vaccinated. And I have to ask, and the people are asking, what is happening here? What is the situation? Because there has been a lengthy lead in time. We all knew that we would need to deliver the logistics in relation to a vaccination programme, because the uncertainty here is causing huge anxiety. And all the while, another issue I've raised with you remains unresolved, and that's the urgent need of affording priority vaccinations for family carers. Many carers are at the wit's end. I'm sure they've spoken to you as they've spoken to us. The question that thousands of carers are asking, Taoiseach, is who steps in to take care of a vulnerable family member who needs round-the-clock care 7 days a week if they get sick? This is especially true for carers with vulnerable children who can't yet be vaccinated, with their only protection being that if the carer is vaccinated. Family carers, as you know, provide care that is often very specialised, very intense and very intimate. And the case for family carers to be afforded some level of priority is a very strong one, Taoiseach. But the government haven't listened, or at least not so far. So maybe you won't take my word for it, but listen to the words of the carers themselves. One lady writes, "I'm a family carer. I've cared for my dad for the last 10 years. He has Parkinson's and dementia, and my mother suffers from serious medical conditions. If I get sick, there will be no one else to care for either of them, or to even bring groceries to their house." Another carer tells us, "My little girl has special needs, and I'm so fed up of fighting for her basic rights. My biggest worry is if me or my husband get COVID, as I fear the impacts for Ella. We would not self-isolate from her, as she simply would just think that we have left her. It's an insult being so far down the list with absolutely no backup plan." And I want you to answer the question that is on the mind of every carer in the country, Taoiseach, and that is, who will step in? You told me 2 weeks ago that you asked NIAC to examine this matter, but since then we've heard nothing. So it is time for you to afford family carers the respect and recognition they deserve. And can I ask you, will you provide the relief that family carers so badly need, and tell them if they will be afforded priority for vaccination?
Gurmagat, asta chud ceist agus tá bránarm go raibh mé déanach. Tá dul chun cín á dhéanamh agus a leith dáú an vaccine, agus tátar agus túr go mhain for amach an 500,000 an seachtain seo. Beg an céad dáileog feite ar glán agus ar gáirde atá os cionn 85 bliain d'aois faoi dhearú na seachtaina seo. Cé go bhfuil bóthar fada amach roiin go fóil, tá sé le feiceáil go bhfuil turú dhearfach le feiceáil an seo, agus go hidir náisiúnta ó thaobh tionchar na vaccíní. Tá sé mar spruch ag an rialtas go mbeidh an céad dáileog den vaccín feite ag breis agus 8 faoin géad do dhaoine fásta Queenie Fuyeru v on Vehev. Deputy, just in relation to the vaccine programme, I appreciate that there have been some issues and have been some delays. A consignment of 25,000 AstraZeneca vaccines that we had expected to arrive last week did not arrive at short notice. We're told it will arrive before the end of the month, allowing us to catch up. So there will be weeks where we fall behind target. There will be weeks where we go ahead of target. And I acknowledge that there have been difficulties getting the vaccine to some general practices. And this is a big logistical operation. And I do think we need to be patient and supportive with HSE as they work this out and they get this job done. But there are reasons for optimism and reasons for comfort. By this weekend, 500,000 vaccines will have been given in this state. We'll be complete or close to completion with nursing home staff and residents, with frontline healthcare workers. We'll be thereabouts with the over 85s. And this week already we've moved on to people in the 80 to 84 age group, which I think is very encouraging. That's happening in some parts of the country. In terms of priority and how people are prioritised, really at the moment, two groups are being prioritised. Healthcare workers, and I think we all understand why that should be the case, because healthcare workers are the ones most at risk of getting this virus, and people over 70, and then people under 70 with medical conditions, because they're the ones who are most likely to get severely ill, and they're the ones who are most likely to die from this virus. So who's being prioritised? Healthcare workers who are most at risk of getting sick, the over 70s and people under 70 with a medical condition, because they're the ones who are most at risk of dying or getting very sick as a result of this illness. And NIAC is advising that they're the groups should be prioritised. The government agrees with that prioritisation. While I totally appreciate and value the work that's done by carers all over the country, I don't think they should be prioritised at the expense of healthcare workers or at the expense of the over 70s. Or at the expense of people under 70 with a severe medical condition. And in fairness, I don't think you believe that either. We all accept that healthcare workers have to come first, then the elderly, then people with medical conditions, because they're the ones who are most at risk. Once they are all done, once they've all had their first dose, then NIAC will be able to consider other groups, including groups, for example, such as carers. But I don't think this is something that you should play politics about. I do think Sinn Féin is doing that. If you were being honest in your position, you would at least say who you think should be downgraded. Anytime you move any group, any profession, anybody in society, any cohort up the list of priority, by definition you have to move somebody down. And when you're calling for groups to be prioritised and you don't have the honesty to say who you want to be moved down the list, that means your position isn't genuine. It means you're playing politics. And carers are too busy, they've too much on their hands to be played politics with in the way you are.
Taoiseach, that's a very disappointing response from you. And can I make the point that the only person who's playing politics here is yourself? There is a very genuine argument and rationale for making family carers to having some priority for family carers. There is no priority for them at all at the minute. They fall into just the general population in terms of age group. I made the point that many family carers, and I know these, some of them are very close to me. So don't tell me that I'm playing politics with this when I know the risks that are associated with this. So some of these are looking after very vulnerable children. And if they contract COVID-19, it could be a serious consequence for these younger children. So I'm asking you, did you ask for the advice in relation to family carers? You have said on the floor of the Dáil that that advice was being sought. Last week you said that you hadn't got it. All we're asking is, has NIAC given you advice in relation to family carers? In relation to your argument in terms of the mess in terms of communication and the infrastructure not in place properly to roll out the vaccine for the over 85s.
Thank you, Deputy.
Your argument that AstraZeneca didn't arrive last week doesn't wash. AstraZeneca is not being provided to the over 85s. The problem here is, Minister, you're in government for quite a period of time now, and we don't have the proper infrastructure in the middle of March where GPs have to cancel hundreds of appointments because vaccines aren't arriving, which should be arriving, and others are getting it with very little notice.
Thanks, Deputy. The answer to your question is yes. The government has asked NIAC to consider prioritising family carers after the current groups. And I strongly believe that it's right that we prioritise healthcare workers, those most likely to get sick, and people over 70 and people under 70 with medical conditions, because they're the ones most likely to die or get very sick from this virus. But we have asked NIAC to give consideration to prioritising family carers once those groups have been vaccinated, because they should be prioritised. I am disappointed that once again you won't answer my question. Anytime you move a group of people, several 100,000 people in this case, up the list, you have to bring somebody down the list. The fact you won't say so really shows how hollow and dishonest your position is, and how you're trying to court votes and take advantage of family carers in the way you are. And I think that's entirely wrong. I just think it's the most cynical form of politics that can possibly be used at the moment, trying to play politics in that way with carers who have too much to worry about than this type of carry on. But just to finish up, the reason why we didn't meet the 100,000 target last week was because of the AstraZeneca order not arriving. 25,000 that was intended for healthcare workers, but that will arrive before the end of the month.
Thank you.